Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Betsy Love. I am an author of Sweet, Clean Christian Romances, and today I'm going to share with you Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 of An Unexpected Blessing. Chapter 1 is recorded with an AI voice. Chapter 2 is my own voice. So I would like to know from you which one you prefer. And if you're new here to my channel, I would love it if you would subscribe. And if you already have, thank you so much. Also, if you would give me a thumbs up, that would be wonderful, and hit that notification bell and you'll get notified whenever I share a new video with you. Anyway, without further ado, here is An Unexpected Blessing.
An Unexpected Miracle. A Sweetheart's Cafe Romance. Book 1. By Betsy Love. Chapter 1. Olivia woke to the sound of a crash and breaking glass. She gripped the bed and held on for dear life. An earthquake? An incoming tornado? As she listened, her heart pounded wildly in her chest. Patting the bed beside her, she felt for Daisy, her Savannah cat, who usually nestled beside her. She had left the bed and cried from somewhere nearby. In the dark, Olivia fumbled for the lamp beside the table. The door to the closet hung open a crack. Hissing followed a guttural growl. She wasn't sure if she should be relieved or terrified. If Mitch were still alive, he would have tackled the problem. She grabbed the flashlight sitting on the nightstand, not because she hadn't found the switch to the lamp, but as a weapon against whatever Daisy was up against. Mitch would have grabbed his shotgun. A firearm of that magnitude would have been overkill in this circumstance. She hated to think of the poor intruder who faced the end of his barrel. With one hand on the doorknob and the other with her fist wrapped around the flashlight, she yanked the door open. Light from the flashlight spilled into the closet. Daisy's green eyes stared down at her from the top shelf, holding a rat. Olivia screamed and backed out of the closet, tripping over the cardboard box that her nearly black cat had knocked off the shelf to get to the rat. She landed on her behind and crawled crab-like out of the walk-in closet and collapsed into a heap on the rug at the foot of the bed. "Good girl," she mumbled. Isn't that why she'd insisted on getting a cat in the first place? Daisy leaped from the shelf onto the shoe rack, then over the box she'd knocked from the shelf and exited the closet. The dead rodent hung from her mouth. "Oh, ew." Olivia retreated on her bum until her back hit the footboard. Daisy dropped the rat on the carpet in front of Olivia. This wasn't the first time her cat had brought her a present, but never in the middle of the night and never one quite that big. Her oversized cat stepped over the rodent and bumped Olivia's head with hers, waiting for approval. Olivia stroked the cat's head and scratched under its chin. "You are such a good baby." Daisy purred her response, jumped onto the bed, and turned once in a circle before settling back into the covers. Sometimes Olivia swore her cat was more dog than feline. Daisy meowed once more, deep and throaty, before settling against the pillow, leaving Olivia to deal with the death and destruction lying at her feet. Daisy meowed again as if beckoning Olivia back to the bed. Not until Olivia took care of the murder scene. For a fraction of a second, she thought about picking the rat up by the tail but shuddered at having to touch it. Flipping on light switches as she went, she retrieved the broom and dustpan from the laundry room, and scooped up the intruder. Barefoot and in her pajamas, she hurried to the outdoor garbage bin and dumped the rat inside. Locking the front door behind her, she returned the dustpan and went back to the bedroom. Daisy had already fallen asleep. How could anyone sleep after such mayhem? Olivia flipped the switch, flooding the closet with light. On the floor lay the small box of memorabilia she'd kept for the last 25 years or more. She pulled the cardboard flaps back. The breaking glass had been the hand-blown piano she'd bought in Disney World when she'd gone with her family her senior year over spring break. Mitch had hated it and called it tacky. She had hoped someday to bring it out again, and she probably would have if she'd remembered it was still here. Now it stood as a broken symbol of her shattered marriage. Thanks to Daisy, Olivia no longer felt like going back to bed. Her clock said 4:30. Another half hour of sleep wouldn't have done any good, anyway. She picked up the container and took it into the kitchen to grab a pair of gloves before digging into the box. She lifted the lid and peered inside. On top of the pile lay the silver belt buckle she'd won at her final barrel racing competition. The sight tugged at something tender inside her. That had been the day she last held Zeke's hand, her childhood sweetheart. Their palms had been slick with nervous sweat, and they'd kept wiping them on their jeans, laughing like it didn't matter. But everything changed the day her best friend announced she was engaged to Zeke. With a sad sigh, she closed the lid of the box. She'd have to deal with this all later. For now, she had to get moving, or she'd be late opening the cafe. After a quick shower, she donned her Miracle Cafe t-shirt, the one all her employees wore, and piled her wet hair into a messy bun on top of her head. She stroked Daisy on the head and kissed her goodbye. "Be a good girl and catch all the nasty things." Under her breath she muttered, "But don't leave them on the rug." The cafe sat adjoined to the only hotel in Miracle, Texas. Most of the original staff she'd kept and then hired a couple of girls who'd graduated from their local high school. With her portion of Mitch's life insurance money, it had given her the opportunity to purchase the restaurant. She wished it had been enough to cover the plans she had in mind to expand and rebrand. When she reached the restaurant, Brianna and Armando stood on the sidewalk outside the doors, huddled together. Though not that cold, Brianna chummed up to the assistant chef, and he didn't seem to mind the attention of the newest waitress. Until she could figure out what had brought Brianna to their little town, Olivia was hesitant to encourage their romantic relationship. Olivia unlocked the front door, and Hector, the head cook, entered first. "You want me to try that Eggs Benedict this morning?" Olivia pulled her black standard apron off its hook and tied it around her waist. Then, tucking her phone into the pocket, she threw over her shoulder, "Sure, but let's not put it on the menu until I decide." "You got it, boss." Olivia straightened the napkins and sighed contentedly when the first jingle of the day signaled her first customer. That was until she saw who it was. Her heart still ramped up its pace whenever he came into the restaurant, especially now that she was a widow and free to flirt with him. What had been holding her back? Finding that belt buckle in the top of the box reminded her of the huge crush she'd had on him in high school. Not that she needed the reminder every time he came into the cafe. He greeted her with his half-smile, his brown eyes looking tired. His hair had gone prematurely gray, but bits of brown still peeked through. His face had grown even more handsome with all the time he spent outdoors with his guests. The Dude Ranch part of the Bar Z he'd added in the last couple of years seemed to be thriving, along with his yearly rodeo. Her gut lay hogtied in the pit of her stomach. Still, Olivia put on her best smile. "Morning, Zeke." That sounded pleasant, didn't it? Then why was he looking at her so oddly? He nodded and waited for her to show him to his seat. Even though he'd married Bethany, her best friend from high school, Olivia had stuffed her feelings for him so deep that even her cat wouldn't be able to hunt them down.
Zeke couldn't face another pot of cowboy coffee and stale muffins, so he headed into town. Cook could go back to the ranch and clean up his chuck wagon. The guests at the Dude Ranch had enjoyed the trail food, but Zeke had grown tired of it. Instead, he opted for his favorite diner. Well, the only one in Miracle, Texas, anyway, unless he counted the Greasy Spoon at the opposite end of town. "Morning, Livy." Zeke rubbed his eyes, bleary from a lack of sleep and spending too long on the trail. When his eyes met Olivia's, that sweet twinkle still knocked him off his boots. She was as pretty as she was in high school. From her bright blue eyes setting off her pale skin and high cheekbones to her mouth that reminded him of an old Shakespearean quote, "Oh, how ripe in the snow," and then something about two cherries meeting. They'd had to read A Midsummer Night's Dream in high school. He shook his head and glanced down at the apron tied around her slender waist. "Regular booth?" she asked. While her words were pleasant enough, the tone of her voice said she probably wished he'd spent his breakfast on the trail. Now he felt the same way. Was she still holding a grudge against him? "Yes, please." He tried for small talk after a long week, but the fatigue left his words clipped. Coffee? This wasn't the first time she'd asked without much of a smile. Black. Right up. She set the menu in front of him. He watched her glide across the dining room. Her shapely hips could probably still win that hula hoop contest. Was that a pang of longing that still ran through him? If Bethany hadn't been in such a dire strait, would Zeke have married Olivia? She had seemed happy enough with Mitch until he left her, only to return a few months later begging for forgiveness. Had he died before she'd made her peace with him? Zeke studied her when she leaned over the counter, stretching to retrieve something. When she stood back up, her hand clutched a stack of napkins. Her laughter at something the other waitress said carried across the dining room. He always loved that sound, missed it. Bethany often snorted when she laughed. Was it too soon for Olivia to think about another man? How long did a widow need to grieve? If she was still mourning her loss, she hid it well. Maybe the cafe kept her mind off sad things. Although Zeke suspected the only reason she'd married their high school classmate in such a hurry was because Zeke had chosen Bethany over Livy. At the beginning of their senior year, he'd almost asked Olivia to be his girl, but the fear of ruining their friendship kept him from doing so. He'd never forget the look on her face when Bethany blurted out they were getting married. Olivia returned with the coffee. No trace of the expression crossed her delicate features. "What did you decide on this morning?" she asked. He closed the menu without even looking at the selection. "Can I have a slice of your apple pie?" She picked up the menu and tucked it under her arm. "Hector's trying a new recipe this morning. I know you like eggs Benedict. It's the same ingredients, but in a casserole." Zeke had also had his fill of casseroles for a lifetime. "No, I think I'll just have apple pie this morning." Olivia chuckled. "Living dangerously?" "No, trail food has just left me wanting." He motioned to her pad. "I'll take a good serving of ice cream on top." "You got it." She turned and went to the display cabinet where she already had a selection of pies and sliced a piece, then took it into the kitchen where he supposed she was scooping ice cream onto the top. When she returned, she set his breakfast in front of him. His choice of morning food would have appalled Bethany. "Enjoy." Olivia turned and left his table. Zeke took a bite and sighed with contentment. Well, horse feathers, if Olivia didn't make the best apple pie. After he finished, he resisted the urge to lick the plate clean. Then again, when he caught her looking at him, he picked up the plate and swiped his tongue across it, adding a slurp. "You're right, Livy. Best pie and ice cream anywhere in Texas, probably in the entire world." She'd hated that nickname in junior high and despised it in high school. He didn't know why he did that whenever he came into the Miracle Diner, licking the plate like that. Maybe he enjoyed getting a rise out of her. He kind of liked the way she snapped her apron. It's not that he acted like this all the time. Bethany would never have allowed such deplorable manners. When the three of them were in junior high, Olivia used to laugh at his antics, while Bethany slapped his hand. He supposed Olivia had grown out of her childish ways. Marriage and raising a family changed a person. It had for him. He glanced over at Olivia, where she stood behind the counter pouring coffee for one of the cowhands. Delbert, a nice kid, but clumsy on a horse. By his laughter, she must have told one of her jokes. Did Mitch laugh? He seemed so serious all the time that he couldn't imagine him ever smiling. Zeke had studied Olivia's husband on several occasions, and his face never brightened when she walked into a room. He never opened a door for her, never did any of the things in public that a husband might do, should do. It had been close to a year since he had passed away. Did she still mourn him? Did Mitch ever give her a reason to miss him? Early spring was a hard time for both of them, having lost their spouses in the same season. Though Bethany passed away 6 years ago, it felt like yesterday, and yet forever ago. Ellie and Heather, His older daughters both kept telling him he needed to let go. He supposed he held off dating for his youngest daughter, Serena. She had never gotten over her mother's death. The depression settled on her, and she hadn't done well in school, had given up on barrel racing, and he even suspected she was shoplifting. When Olivia looked up, he waved her over. "Can I get another slice?" Delbert turned. "Oh, hey, boss man," he waved. "Del." Zeke nodded to his newest hand, then turned and motioned again to Olivia. "Don't forget the ice cream. Double scoop." She gave him a cheesy thumbs up, the same one she used to do so long ago. Would Bethany's ghost let him move on? How long should he allow Olivia to mourn? His heart pounded at the thought of asking her out on a date. Had too much passed between them since high school for her to ever forgive him? Would his family be okay if he started dating again? The only one who would be upset was Serena. Olivia set a second slice in front of Zeke and walked away. He couldn't see the actual pie because of all the ice cream covering it. Sarcasm? Mockery? Playful? Olivia could be all of those things, so different from Bethany. But then his wife had grown up in a sad home. Nothing joyful ever happened there, like it had at Olivia's. After eating every last crumb and licking the plate clean once again, he burped just to see how she'd react. She snapped her apron and glared at him before going into the kitchen. Why did he like to provoke her so? Was he trying to bring back their happier days? A picture of Bethany's hazel eyes narrowing at him for his terrible manners appeared in his mind. Then she'd softened her expression. Even in private, she never giggled at his antics like Olivia had. He turned his focus to the kitchen door, still slightly swinging. It had been 6 years since Bethany had died, and less than a year since Olivia's husband had passed. Could she allow herself to remember the sparks they'd had in high school? Thank you so much for joining me today. And again, please give me a thumbs up and be sure and leave a comment down below which version you like better. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you again.